Já está, iniciar direto, já está.
Pronto, escolha um lugar que dê acesso. Boa tarde. Boa tarde a todos e a todas. Bem-vindos. Finalmente, depois de uma grande aventura, temos a nossa primeira reunião presencial, ainda com algumas máscaras, mas já com o grande gosto de estarmos juntos. Eu vou chamar para as primeiras palavras o nosso querido João Rebelo, deputado à Assembleia da República durante 20 anos, membro da Comissão de Defesa Nacional da Assembleia da República e presidente da Comissão Portuguesa do Atlântico. E, acima de tudo, presidente da ALPI.
Muito obrigado, Madalena. Agradeço, Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for accepting the invitation. I will speak in Portuguese, but if you want, Madalena and Maria can help if some of the words will not be understood. Agradeço a vida de todos. Como sabem, a ALPI foi criada há um ano e nunca foi possível organizarmos um evento, a não ser as eleições que foram presenciais, todas as nossas reuniões, congressos, etc., assembleias gerais, perdão, têm sido resultante sempre por Zoom. E finalmente podemos fazer um evento, que é um evento modesto, que também temos ainda algumas limitações de inscrições de pessoas por causa da situação pandémica que ainda estamos a viver, a cidade, mas enfim, limita um bocado a nossa ação. E portanto é com muita alegria que finalmente pessoas podem se conhecer pela primeira vez, as pessoas também me conheceram pela primeira vez fisicamente, porque já me conheciam através dos eventos visuais, e é num momento também muito importante da nossa associação, porque temos um novo embaixador. Então nós desafiámos o Sr. Embaixador Dor, posso chamar por isso, a estar aqui presente neste primeiro evento do nosso aniversário, para também conhecer algumas das pessoas da ALPI. E o que é que motiva um grupo de portugueses a se ter organizado através desta organização, portugueses e portugueses, de diversos, de variadíssimas cores políticas, ou não cores políticas, de variadíssimas áreas profissionais, de variadíssimas culturas e vivências, pessoas que também luso-brasileiros, até luso-franceses, pessoas de nacionalidades próximas das nossas. Esta associação abrange tudo isso, mas é sobretudo a paixão que nos une é Israel. Israel na sua diversidade, Israel nos seus contrastes, Israel na sua magnífica e beleza que tem quando nós visitamos, mas Israel, sobretudo porque nós consideramos, e foi isso o motivo da criação da ALPI, de que Israel e as relações com Israel e Portugal devem ser promovidas, defendidas, acarinhadas, multiplicadas, mas também porque há dois elementos essenciais que nos uniu que nos lançou. Nós achámos que Israel era tratada de uma forma desonesta, muitas vezes, nos mídias. E, portanto, nós achámos que os mídias têm que perceber que há muitos portugueses e portuguesas que ficam angustiados, que ficam revoltados com muitas coisas que se lê. As pessoas podem ter as opiniões que quiserem sobre Israel, têm todo o direito absoluto de gostarem ou não gostarem. O que nós não gostamos é que muita dessa opinião é fundamentada em mentiras, em manipulações, em factos que não batem com a realidade, e isso nós não podemos aceitar. E essa motivação também nos levou aqui. E também porque existem alguns movimentos, em Portugal, graças a Deus, ainda são muito limitados, como o BDS, o Boycott Disinvesting Section contra Israel, um movimento que nasceu, se não me engano, em França ou em Inglaterra, que tem muito dinheiro pago dos iranianos, vamos escolher os nomes como deve ser, e não achar que isto vem de dinheiros de coisas românticas, não, são os iranianos a financiar estes movimentos, que têm muita salvaguarda em alguns partidos políticos na Europa e tentem que a Europa boicote Israel e os produtos de Israel e as relações económicas com Israel, baseado pura e simplesmente num argumento totalmente falso, que é o que se está a passar na autoridade palestiniana ou na relação com os palestinianos. E, portanto, isto também nós temos que combater esse movimento. Finalmente, promover a parte mais importante, que é a cultura de Israel ou a cultura de Portugal entre os dois países. E nós temos feito isso com uma atividade francamente notável, e a Madalena nisso tem sido insuperável. E, finalmente, a defesa e a promoção dos valores judaicos cristãos, judaicos portugueses, chamam como quiser, do nosso país. E nós não queremos e nunca vamos deixar que as pessoas esquecem das raízes judaicas que Portugal tem, e muitas ainda, e deve ser promovido, divulgado e acarinhado. O judaísmo português é vivo, deu-nos muita coisa e deve ser, por isso, sempre defendido e relembrado. E essa é outra parte que nós gostamos de fazer com carinho. Finalmente, vocês também, tinha 10 minutos, eu vou ficar por 5, estou aqui com 4 e meio, se for bem. Nós estamos metidos em muitas redes, nós ALPI, em uma data de redes europeias que combatem o antissemitismo, que combatem o holocausto denial e que questionam sempre os países que fazem pouco em relação a este combate que nós temos que fazer. E isto também vamos ver em todas as plataformas, já estamos presentes em várias plataformas, estamos a trabalhar em rede com várias plataformas, vamos trabalhar com o Parlamento Português sobre essa questão, vamos trabalhar com toda a gente, porque achamos que é fundamental também não esquecer esse combate, que está cada vez mais presente nas redes sociais, está cada vez mais anónimo, mas violento e virulento, e portanto tem que ser denunciado. E viram várias tomadas de posição da ALPI ao longo deste ano, foi também para denunciar claramente afirmações que eram antissemitas, escondidas sob o manto do antissemitismo, que é o que vai os desculpando, as pessoas acham que desculpam por isso. E portanto está aqui feito um bocado uma perspectiva de um ano. Fizemos muito, mas há muito mais para fazer. A descentralização da ALPI é fundamental. Vamos começar a trabalhar em rede com outros grupos alpistas em todo o país, para permitir que a vivência da ALPI seja nacional, nas ilhas, em todos os distritos. Vamos tentar essa divulgação, essa multiplicação. Isto é como uma árvore que vai dar os seus frutos, e vamos ter muitos frutos. E esse é o próximo passo em relação à nossa associação. Portanto, muito obrigado a todos a vossa presença. Agora vou passar a Madalena e depois vamos ouvir as palavras do Sr. Embaixador, com muito gosto que vamos ouvir, e que já sei que adora. I know that you are enjoying very much your stay here. We had the pleasure to meet right on your presence in the start in August. You have a beautiful agenda to put forward in Portugal, the relationship between Israel and Portugal, Portugal and Israel, in all fronts, and you can call on us. We are there to help you if you need to push forward your ideas. So thank you very much again to be here. Madalena, muito obrigado.
Aquilo que eu quero dizer para introduzir o nosso querido Embaixador Dor Shapira é que relaciona-se com a paraxá desta semana, que, ou seja, a parábola, digamos assim, do Antigo Testamento, que exatamente hoje é lech, vai. Então, a vida de um diplomata é isso, lech. E foi o que Dor Shapira e sua família fizeram. Teve 15 anos ligado ao Ministério dos Negócios Estrangeiros como porta-voz da Embaixada na Austrália, em Washington, Ministro Conselheiro de Assuntos do Congresso e desde 2017 Diretor do Departamento de Coordenação com os países com os quais Israel não tinha relações diplomáticas. E isso fez tão bons frutos que daí vieram os acordos abrâmicos que o Sr. Embaixador já disse que foram os highlights da sua vida profissional, e eu espero bem que outro highlight da sua vida profissional venha a ser a sua estadia em Portugal e tudo aquilo que vier a conseguir. Depois, então, vamos ouvir o que é que o Sr. Embaixador tem a dizer, o que é que pensa, what you think to do in Portugal, and after all, what you expect from us. We are here for you, so the floor is yours.
Hola, shalom. I didn't understand everything Madalena said, so I just hope that she lied and said good things. But thank you very much for having me here this afternoon. I think I'm very thrilled to be here. I first of all want to thank ALPI. I want to thank all the heads of ALPI. I want to thank Jao, I want to thank Madalena, and all the people that are working on the strengthening of the relations between our countries all over the years. And you're doing it from your heart, and that's something that we don't take for granted, and we see it, and we really appreciate that as Israelis, and I think it's very important for the relations between the countries. So thank you for having this organization and making sure that it will do such a good job all year long. Madalena asked me, actually she told me you can speak as long as you want. So, you know, to tell a diplomat that he can speak as long as he wants, it's a mistake. To tell an Israeli diplomat he can speak as long as he wants, it's a big mistake. But she's a smart lady. She knew that she's doing it just before Shabbat, so the time will limit my speech, and that's why I won't talk too much. I will just important for me to come here and say what is on the embassy agenda, what is on my agenda, where we are right now, and to actually to make sure that you, all of us, will work together and make sure that ALPI and many other organizations in Portugal will join us in order to succeed and to reach our goals. I think that the relations between Portugal and Israel, as we see it today, are quite in a good place. And there is a reason why we go to that good place. First of all, and I know that there are some people that sitting in this room that we need to thank them for that, the law that Portugal had moved 2015, right? It was 13. It created a bonding between our two nations, a bonding that depends on the history of the two nations. And Israel and Portugal are very alike in the deepness of the history that we have. And by that, Portugal recognizing the history and letting Israelis and Jewish people with connection and heritage to Portugal to be able to apply and get the citizenship, I think that was a huge milestone in the relations between the countries that deepened even more the connections between the people. And that's why I would like to thank you for that, for all those who were in Parliament back then and promoting that, because I think that, for no doubt, was one of those things that took the relations 2 steps ahead. And when I was sitting with your president 2 weeks ago, he actually mentioned that and said exactly the same, that he thinks that passing this law created something very unique between the countries. So that was the first step. Second step that happened only 3 years ago was the direct flights between the countries. Having the ability today to go on a flight and after 4.5 hours land in Tel Aviv, or vice versa from Tel Aviv and land in Lisbon, it creates the connection between the people. And you will have to believe me for that. I served in Australia. So to get from door to door from Tel Aviv to Australia took us almost 30 hours. And back then I had 2 little children. It's not pleasant. So to have a direct flight between the 2 countries, I think that direct flight between countries create connections between the people much deeper than we can even imagine. And that's why I think that's also one thing that helped. One of the things that we will have to work on in order to change is that there will be more Portuguese people on those flights, because we have many Israelis on those flights coming to visit in Lisbon, coming to visit in Portugal. I want to see also Portuguese tourists coming the other way around and exploring Israel, and not only because of religious reasons. They need to come and explore Israel also because of, to make some fun in Tel Aviv, and because of business reasons and tourism reasons. So I really hope we'll be able even to take it one step forward. The third thing that actually defines the relations between our countries is our economic relations. The trade between Israel and Portugal today stands around $400 million, which is nice. It's not great, it's nice. And the reason I'm saying it's not great is because the potential is much more. I think Israel has a lot to offer to Portugal in many fields, and Portugal has a lot to offer to Israel in many fields. And economic relations between the countries is exactly those kind of relations that affects everything. Because if you have a lot of Israelis investments in Portugal and a lot of Portuguese investment in Israel, it's much more difficult for the political level to get to make decisions that can affect those kind of. I did understand BDS that you mentioned, so that's a great example. For a country to join a BDS when there is a given trade and economic connections between the two countries, it's almost impossible. And that's why we need to make sure that those relations which are good and the numbers are, as I said, are nice, we need at least to double them. So my job here is to take those relations that we're talking about to even a better place, because the potential is there, and we need to make sure that we are able to achieve as much as we can from this potential. So looking at that, there are three elements that I told my staff at the embassy that I'm, at least in the beginning, going to concentrate on. And of course, everybody who would like to join us, we will be happy with that. So the first one, I'm a diplomat, and that's the most important thing for diplomats is to be relevant and to be able to affect the political environment that you are in. So the first one is, of course, the political level. We need to make sure that Israel and Portugal will deepen our relations also in the political level. We need to make sure, and that's also one thing I promised your president, that we will see more and more Israeli leaders visiting Portugal. It's about time that we will see an Israeli president visiting you for the first time. The Prime Minister, we had you already, which is good, but you can come again. We need to see the foreign minister, we need to see other ministers in order to create those political relations between the sides. Because once an Israeli minister is coming here to work and to speak with his counterpart, it affects the whole atmosphere of the people that work with this minister and with those ministries, and it deepens the connection. That's why we need to work at the political level, and I'm open to work with anyone on the political level who is open to work with me. I have I'm one of those people that have no boundaries, and I will be happy to meet with anyone as long as he's not anti-Semitic. That's the only thing that I would put as a limit. Other than that, I can even accept in a meeting criticism against Israel. I will fight back. I will tell them what I think, but I'm ready to listen because that's the best way to create a dialogue. By listening and by sometimes those kind of dialogues, the main problem is that there is a lack of knowledge on the other side. So without being able to talk, how can we make sure that the other side will know about it and will learn about it and will be able maybe even to change his mind? That's why I'm ready to talk with anyone, with only one condition that will not happen, as I mentioned. So that's the first one, is the political. The second one, which I mentioned before, is the economical front. I want to see more and more Israeli investments in Portugal and Portugal investments in Israel. I think there is a real, at least from the Israeli side, you can feel a real willingness of Israel's company to be open to new markets, and for them, Portugal, it's a new market that we want to examine. It's up to us to make sure that we will introduce those Israeli companies the Portugal market in order to create those kind of connections. And there is many areas that we can create this context. It will be in the area of water management, of cybersecurity, homeland security, agriculture, and many more. And that's one thing that we will do. My staff at the embassy knows that I'm going to participate in almost any summit that will be in Portugal. This week, 2 days ago, I visited the Air Summit. Where was it, Lusa? Outubro. Okay, I'm still not good with that pronunciation. So yes, I visited the Air Summit because there is a lot to do in the field of aviation. Not only on the defense front, but also on the civil aviation. Israel has lots of experience, and also Portugal has experience. And we had Israeli companies in this summit that we asked them to come and introduce themselves. So that's a good example, and next month we're going to have in Lisbon the Web Summit, and there will be more than almost 10 Israeli companies that will participate in that, because if If Israel will not participate in Web Summits, then I don't know who should participate in that. And that's why, although, and despite of COVID, we were able to bring some of those Israeli companies here. Hopefully, as we see in our region, inshallah, next year when COVID will be monitored even better, we'll be able to have even a bigger and larger presence in this summit. But that's the idea, to make sure that we don't miss any opportunity in Portugal to create those kinds of connections between Israel and Portugal, economic connections. So that is the second thing. The third thing is probably one of the most important one, the one between the people, people to people. Today, the public and social media, for instance, is a very important thing. If we will not participate, but really participate in the social media, we are missing a huge number of Portugal young people who are going to be the next leadership of this country, not in 30 years, but in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, which we can already affect them today. Today, by one post on Facebook, you can change lives much more than writing op-eds that you prepare 7 months in advance. Today, I always give it as an example. You know, the most influenced person in Portugal is, of course, CR7. I can't fight his 150 million followers on Facebook. And when this guy just moved a can of Coke from one side to another side, to the other side, the sales of Coke drops in $50 billion. He doesn't have to write op-eds, he doesn't have to give any kind of, write any kind of article, he just did that. So the social media has a lot of effect that we need to use better in order to talk with the people of Portugal, with the young people of Portugal. And not only the young, with all due respect, my mother-in-law uses Facebook more than me. So it's not only the young leadership and it's not only the young gay population, it's everyone today is using any kind of social media. It could be Facebook, it could be Twitter, it could be Instagram, TikTok, whatever you want to call it. And that's something that us at the embassy, we are going to put a lot of effort in that in order to make sure that we create this kind of discussions between Israel and Portugal, between the people to people, through those elements. And of course, in this, I won't call it war, but in this mission, any one of us is a soldier, because all of us have our phone and all of us can connect to those social media and act in them. So of course, I will invite you to do so. So those are the three elements that I'm going to be concentrating on them. I have a great team at the embassy that works with me, but it's not enough. We need more people to help us, and that's why ALPI, and that's why other organizations, Jewish organizations, economic organizations, other organizations all over Portugal, I invite all of them and all of you to come and join us in order to succeed and to achieve what we are trying to achieve. Because at the end of the day, I think everyone in this room has the same goal as me, and that to take the relations between our two countries to even a better place. So that's why it's so important for me, first of all, to tell you that, and secondly, to make sure and to ask you to join us in this journey in order to take it to a better place. I have another 5 minutes, or? Of course. And another 10? No, I'll just mention, because I will take this opportunity that I'm here, and I'm happy to open it also to questions or discussions if you want later. But today, Israel, we are dealing with, I would say, 4 major things when we look at the Israel security and the global agenda. We're dealing with 4 major things. And of course, the most important thing, there's some politicians, the most important thing is the government to be stable. But that's something that even our God, sometimes it's too difficult for him to make sure that the Israeli government will be stable. But that's the major thing. But the real thing that we are dealing with right now, I would say, number one, as it's been for the last few years, is the Iranian issue. Iran changed their government in the last few months. Since August, they have a different, new government there. Very, very radical. most of them coming from the Quds Force. The amazing thing is that many of ministers in the government are under UN and EU sanctions, which is unacceptable, but that's the situation. But that shows you something about this radical government. And what they are doing right now is taking their time. Because if there is anyone in the world, in the Middle East for sure, that know how to take the time and have lots of patience, that's the Iranians. And every moment that they are taking the time, just bring them closer and closer to a point which Israel will not be able to accept. For us, when it's about Iran, it's two major things that we are need to be cautious of. The first one is their intention to get a nuclear weapon, and the second one is their involvement in every bad thing that is going in the region. That would be, I think, the best way to say that. Because Iran involvements today in every terrorist group that there is in the region, every instability that there is in the region, you will see their involvement there. And that's why we need to make sure that it will not happen. We can make sure in a diplomatic way, we can make sure in any other way, but you know, Israel is a small country, and all of you, of course, know that, and we will do whatever is needed to do in order to stop them. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is a little bit more optimistic, is the big change that happened in the region in the last year, and that's the peace and the normalization of Israel with many of our neighbors. We've been able to sign the normalization agreement, the peace agreement with the United Arab Emirates in the last year, with Bahrain, with Morocco, and if you want to, also countries not from the region, also with the OTAN, which is I think 30,000 people in Asia, but still it's another country at the UN. And that's a real strategic change in the region. It's true, we never fought against the United Arab Emirates or Bahrain, but it's a real strategic change to have such a relation. It's a good relation that we've been able to build in 1 year between Israel and an Arab country in the Middle East, which is, you know, from Abu Dhabi or from Dubai, when you go on Burj Khalifa, which is the tallest building of the world, you can almost see Iran. That shows you the strategic importance of these relations. It's a powerful message. It's a powerful message, and it shows you also that you can benefit from this kind of relations with Israel, because if we take United Arab Emirates as an example, we signed this peace agreement exactly a year ago. Since the signing of the peace agreement with them, the trade today between Israel and United Arab Emirates in 1 year is more than $1 billion. In 1 year, $1 billion between the two countries. So it's true that things happened even before the peace agreement was signed. I know, but it shows you something about the potential. It shows you something about the willingness of both sides, the Israeli side and the Arab side and the other side, to gain better life for the people. Because at the end of the day, that is all about. Signing peace agreement with our neighbors, it's not about Palestinians, and it's not about Iran, it's not about anything. It's about giving better life to our people, to Israelis, to Emiratis, to Bahrainis, and to any other country that will join. And we need to push and make sure that many other countries will join that. Today, Israel still don't have diplomatic relations, I think, with 29 countries. We need to make sure that this number will change, and Israel will do whatever it can in order to change that. So we will continue with this front of the normalization. The third one, which is also a part of that, is the Palestinian issue. And right now, in the last few years, the relations between Israel and the Palestinians are still stuck. And that's very unfortunate, because at the end of the day, when the common Palestinian person in Gaza, or in Ramallah, or in Jenin wakes up in the morning, he doesn't think about Israelis, and he doesn't think about settlements, and he doesn't think about ICC or Security Council. He thinks about only one thing, that how he's going to earn his money today in order to feed his family. That's the only thing that he cares about. So we need to make sure that this person, the Palestinian, and that's the majority of the Palestinians, will be the voice of the Palestinian leadership also. And about 2 weeks ago, my foreign minister and his government introduced a new plan that said, put the peace process aside for a second. Let's now talk about the economic process that should be with the Palestinians in order to upgrade their life, and the better life for the Palestinians in Gaza and any other place. In order for that to happen, the Palestinian needs to do a few things, but that should be the model that we should aim to. And here I think the international community has a very, very important role. I'm going to tell you why. Because if the international community will keep doing what they did in the last 20 years, and that's encourage the Palestinian leadership to go to the ICC and to go to the UN and to go to the, to be a waste of time. What did we achieve in the last 20 years? Nothing. We went only backward. We didn't even stop on the same spot. We just went backward. So it's time for the international community to understand that we should move to different channels and to push the Palestinian leadership to those kind of channels. So I hope that will happen as well. And that's also a discussion that we need to make with many countries in the EU, and we're doing that, and also with Portugal. And it's important that this message will be heard also in Portugal, that the people here will understand what the situation is. And I think Portugal is a great example, because we don't have a big, large Palestinian community here. So it's only about telling the right story. And telling the right story, that's, I think, one of my job as an Israeli ambassador, but also I need for that many, many friends in order to tell that story. The last thing which also connects to that, to this story that I'm talking about, is the relevance of Israel in the global agenda. As you know, at the end of this month, there is this Glasgow climate change conference, which I think your Prime Minister is going to participate in. My Prime Minister is also going to participate in that, because global change and climate change is something which is relevant for Israel. And Israel, with all of our startups and great minds that are sitting there, because as you know, we don't have national resources, so we have to use this. And that's the reason why we became a startup nation. We can be a very important, crucial, and an important actor in this fight against global warming, in this fight against climate change. And that's why it's important always to include Israel in those efforts, in the global agenda, what we call. And that's also part of my job, to make sure that Israel will be connected to this kind of agenda. So when someone thinks about Israel, he doesn't think about wars and Palestinians and settlements. He thinks about fighting global warming. He thinks about fighting cybersecurity, cyber attacks. He thinks about helping, solve the hungers in Africa. That's what I want people to think. Not today, it will take a few years to achieve that, but that's what I want people to think when they think about Israel. And as I said before, in order to achieve all of that, we in Israel cannot do it by ourselves. We need friends, we need Jewish community. We need friends that know Israel all over the world. We need people that understand in social media. And that's why I'm here to ask for your good advice, to ask for your help, to ask for your, share on Facebook and Twitter, to ask for anything that you can, as friends of Israel, as Portuguese who are friends of Israel, to do and to assist us in whatever you can in order to tell the Israeli story in the right way, and in order to take the relations between Israel and Portugal to a much better place. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to meet all of you, and I'm looking forward to work together, and let's start. There is a lot to do, so thank you.
And now, my friends, I would like to share with you some images I made with my poor capabilities in informatica, but with my heart. I made a little video, 10 minutes. For some of us, we are going to see some memories, And for our dear Ambassador Dor Shapira, you will be able to see some of our way arriving here. Song, please.
Smile without a reason why. Love as if you were a child. Smile no matter what they tell you. Don't listen to a word they say, 'cause life is beautiful that way. Tears, a tidal wave of tears, light that slowly disappears. Wait before you close the curtain. There's still another game to play, and life is beautiful that way. I will always be as close as you remember from before. Now that you're out here on your own, remember what is real and what we dream is love alone. Keep the laughter in your eyes. Soon your long-awaited prize. We'll forget about our sorrow and think about a brighter day, 'cause life is beautiful that way.
Le compte à rebours a commencé, tellement de choses à terminer, les journées s'accélèrent, je vois filer les heures. J'ai pas le temps de t'écouter ni de te comprendre, de te faire juger, je poursuis mon chemin sans devenir meilleur. Mais si on s'arrêtait pour voir son frère, ne serait-ce qu'un peu, on découvrirait la lumière qui brille dans ses yeux. Amigo, no sigues mejor, ataque a mi ojeja, me avacina, avacina. Y es malo la silla, y se cae beleja, a la vacina, avacina. Le monde parle de nos différences, je sais qu'au-delà des apparences, tu as jamais mon frère, c'est toi qui me rends si fort. Ensemble, nous pouvons tout changer, il suffit d'y croire et surtout d'aimer. La clé de notre bonheur se trouve au fond cœurs. Si on s'arrêtait simplement pour se dire je t'aime, remercier d'aimer son prochain, même s'il n'est pas comme toi, mais maintenant je יש לך, עטפתי אני אוהב אותך, ואהבת חינם, אהבת חינם, הגיע הזמן להשאיר לך, יש אחד בלב אחד, על אהבת חינם, אהבת חינם. Tellement de choses à terminer, les journées s'accélèrent. Je vois filer les heures. J'ai pas le temps de t'écouter ni de te comprendre. Je préfère juger, je poursuis mon chemin sans devenir meilleur. Mais si on s'arrêtait pour voir son frère, ne serait-ce qu'un peu, on découvrirait la lumière qui brille dans ses yeux. אני אוהב אותך באהבת חינם, אהבת חינם. הגיע הזמן להשאיר לך איש אחד בלב אחד, על אהבת חינם, אהבת חינם. Le monde parle de nos différences. Je sais qu'au-delà des apparences, tu es à jamais mon frère. C'est toi qui me rends si fort. Ensemble, nous pouvons tout changer, il suffit d'y croire et surtout d'aimer. La clé de notre bonheur se trouve au fond de nos cœurs. Si on s'arrêtait simplement pour se dire je t'aime, remercier d'aimer son prochain, même s'il n'est pas comme toi, mais maintenant je יש לך, עטפתי אני אוהב אותך, ואהבת חינם, אהבת חינם. des apparences, tu as gelé mon frère.
Já que eu vou agora voltar para a segunda.